Welcome to the Better Business Podcast. I'm your host, Austin Zelan. Join me week after week as I interview high-level entrepreneurs on their journey to success, both in business and personal development. Each week presents new stories to learn from and new ideas on how to run a better business. Stay updated with all the guests we'll have by subscribing to this podcast.
So Sean, thank you so much for joining me. And if you could just give the audience like an overview of your journey in entrepreneurship and kind of where you started and how you got to where you're at today.
Yeah, I got a really interesting journey, and to be able to accomplish some of these numbers at a young age, make it all, lose it all, it's really interesting. But
how old are you, by the way?
I just turned 27 yesterday.
Oh, awesome. Happy birthday.
So that's a new number. And basically I started in college and was broke. I grew up middle class, but my parents didn't give me that many handouts actually. And so yeah, I was broke in college, started off in e-commerce. Drop shipping was hot back then, really hot. That's how I made my first 6 figures selling jerseys. And then from there, invested that money into masterminds, which was one of the best investments I ever made. Saw the potential of what else is out there. E-commerce is cool, but the margins are super thin, right? So you could be doing huge revenue numbers in e-commerce, but only make 6 figures. And that was basically my case. So I looked to transition from there. The pandemic started shortly after. So I started doing B2B. So I started selling masks to hospitals, to governments. I had no experience at all, learning this all on the fly, but was able to rack up $15 million in sales there.
Wow. And
yeah, from there, reinvested some more money into stocks, into crypto, into Forex, lost all of it. That's a whole nother story. I lost over $10 million and had to start from ground zero recently. And yeah, so 2 years ago, I started a marketing agency and that got acquired in 6 months. It was in the crypto space. So we were killing it. Profit margins were super high, got acquired in 6 months. And then from there, started a podcast about 3 months later. We're about a year into that now.
John, tell people a little bit about yourself and kind of what you do for business and how you've scaled that over the years.
Yeah, man. Quick background. I did stand-up comedy for 10 years. Found out I wasn't really funny. It took that long to realize that I'm not good at it. Yeah, 10 years later.
Wow.
Then I owned a PR firm in LA for 10 years. And that was pretty successful. And we saw an exit there back in 2010, a long time ago.
Yeah.
And then I was in the digital space for a hot minute. And for the last 7 years, going on 8, I've been hosting my own podcast called Action Junkeez. And we've been building out the Junkeez brand as a network. So similar to Blue Wire here, only not as cool. But yeah, so I have Action Junkeez, but there's Fitness Junkeez, Political Junkeez, Vegas Junkeez. Pretty much you can name a category, and at some point there will be the name Junkeez after it.
Yeah.
And then we've got a studio here in Vegas called Sticky Paws Studios that we rent out to other shows, and it's obviously the home of all the Junkeez shows. And now we're starting to put podcast studios all over the country. Just opened one in Boca Raton in Florida about 6 months ago. We're working on Dallas next and a bunch of other cool spots. So yeah, so it's exciting for sure.
Could you just maybe tell us a little bit about yourself, a little bit about your business, and what inspired you to get into that field specifically?
Sure. Yeah, great question. First off, thanks for having me. This is great. Glad to be here. We connected only a few months ago, right? And we've become good buddies since then, like-minded people, right?
Yep.
That's great. So my background, so I'm a lawyer. I've been practicing for 12 years. I always knew that I wanted to do something that was, graduate school, MBA, law, something along those lines. And I had an uncle that clerked on the Supreme Court and had some pretty cool experiences. And I shadowed him for a bit. I thought, hey, I could try my hand at that. I think I like that idea. So I went to law school, graduated high in my class and came out of school and did the straight corporate thing. Like I literally went from the small firm to the big firm, rose the corporate ladder, made partner in a few years, was the director of the commercial practice group at a big firm in Phoenix. And then I was making really good money and I was kind of miserable. So I was, kind of grinding away to nothingness, right? I was working for everybody else and didn't feel like it was very fulfilling, right?
Mm-hmm.
So 2020 happened, COVID happened, and I had a little wake up moment. I almost passed away from COVID. So I was, 17 of the worst days of my life where I didn't know if I was going to wake up in the morning.
Wow.
So it was a really rough go. And I have a wife and 4 kids, so it was a rough go. But obviously grace of God, I woke up and I've changed a lot of things about my life since then. I decided to start my own practice, lean into some risk, lean into some hard decisions. And so started my practice. It's been just over 2 years now. And we've scaled it now. We're in Arizona. but we practice all over the Southwest. We have lawyers licensed all over. And,
Awesome.
you know, we're at 20 people now on my team. And then we're now growing nationally. So we have of counsel lawyers in literally every state in the country. So we have 265 lawyers that do fulfillment work around the country. So It's awesome. So it's nice to be in a position now to be the entrepreneurial lawyer, right? It's not just practicing law. It's building a business and you know, scaling and automating that. We're trying to get to 25 million this year and 50 million next year.
Okay, so Dylan, tell us a little bit about yourself, what you do, what kind of business you run, and how long you've been doing it for.
Yeah, so I run a marketing agency. It's called Mindful Agency. We do brand development for people and personalities and brands. And you know, we've worked with some of the largest brands in the industry, some of the largest personalities in the industry. And what we've gotten really good at is taking people who have never done anything and helping them become thought leaders in a short period of time.
Okay, do you find that they have to have a lot of substance before they can do something like that? Like, for example, if somebody wants to be an expert or a thought leader, should they be in business or maybe have like 5, 10 years of experience? Or can you get started with just a base level of knowledge and then work your way up? Or what's like the line that you draw there?
I think the short answer is the more experience you have, the better you're going to come across.
Yeah, absolutely.
There's an up and coming influencer named Alex Hermosi, and he and he you know, he went from zero to crushing it. Everyone seems to know him in this industry really quick. Why? Because he had the knowledge and experience, and he's not just some kid jumping on social media starting to talk about stuff. And you know, and so people can tell, especially the high level people.
Yeah.
The people we've worked with that have a lot of experience, they tend to grow faster if they have a personality.
Yeah.
So the guys that are kind of stone faced, they're monotone, they don't really have much of a personality, they're ultimately never going to really grow, but we can try our best.
Part of that journey, though, moving past those limitations and improving and running a better business, I think learning plays such an important role. And how have you seen learning and just like expanding your knowledge base to push your momentum forward, push your business forward, and take you to the next level? How have you seen it impact that?
You know, I think for me, you know, as we started our business and we broke 6 figures now, and we're believing to break 7 figures coming up in our business.
Mm-hmm.
What I found out is I have to find people that are further down the road than me. So I have mentors in my life, and these mentors are 7-figure, 8-figure entrepreneurs. And so I go to them and I ask questions. Real wisdom says, I'm going to learn from your mistakes, not my mistakes. So how can I connect with people that are further down the road? And here's the thing, I don't want just information, but I want to have wisdom, which means what they tell me, Austin, what you tell me, I'm going to implement in my life. Too many people just want information, but it's not information, it's revelation when it becomes something to you that moves you. So when I wanted to start speaking more, I had a mentor.
Mm-hmm.
And he said, hey, here's what you need to do to become better at speaking. And here's what you need to do so you can now find more opportunities to speak. I didn't try and do it on my own. And one thing I learned, and I've been at this a long time now, is even now, I'm always looking for somebody who's gone further, who's done more, and that helps me, because my mindset can be limited till I get around somebody that recently told me, I was at a conference, and he said to me, he says, you know what? I just see you making $3.5 million in your business this year. Million. I'm happy to maybe, you know, get close to $1 million. And just listening to him, he was telling me how he has made $1 million in an hour.
Wow.
And all the stuff that he has done. And just sitting, have this conversation with one of my mentors, my mind just went, boom.
As far as learning is concerned, in your experience, do you see learning as a big aspect of your success? And how do you continue learning?
Oh, 1,000%. My husband and I both read a lot of books. He's a marathon runner, so he listens to them, 3 hours of running every day. But I love the act of actually reading. And I have a Kindle, but I like paper books. Like if I've got to be on a plane or something, I'll bring it. But I love reading books. I love reading how other people have built things. And I'm one of those like dorks who really like school. Like at some point after my kids are grown, I'll probably go get a PhD like for fun because I like school.
Yeah.
So we do a lot of reading in our house. I listen to a lot of podcasts, watch a lot of YouTube in the background, like while I'm working. I just love to hear how other people have built their businesses, and just business in general is fascinating to me.
How important would you say learning new skills or growth was to that journey?
You know, back then, I didn't realize that that's what was happening.
Yeah.
You know, I'm like, oh, well, I'll just flip houses. Like, I'll just figure it out and learn along the way. And I did.
Mm-hmm.
And then after that skill was, let's just say, mastered, which it's never fully mastered, but good enough, right? And better than most. I'm like, all right, well, now I got to learn this social media skill. And it's a completely different thing.
Yeah.
And I don't care how good you are at business, it doesn't translate into this. You know, this is like being an actor. It's different. You got to learn how to be on camera. You got to learn how to speak properly. You got to learn how to come up with good ideas and hooks and be personable. And so it's completely different than flipping a house or whatever. So I had to learn and master the skill, very much in that being a baseball player was a different skill.
Yeah.
And, you know, I tell this all the time to like solopreneurs. It's like, look, you're a good salesperson right now. You're hustling, you're grinding, you're making money. You know, you can do all that, but becoming an actual business owner is a new skill of hiring people, leading, building an organization. Like there's so much that goes into it. And so you're constantly learning new skills to get to the next level. And my biggest thing is that people need to learn skills that are, you know, relevant to whatever it is they want to accomplish, right? Like if your goal is finance, to me, like, all right, well, I better learn how to sell and I better learn how to market.
Yeah.
But you can't do everything at once. Like you really got to hone in on one skill before you go mess around trying to go learn all these things simultaneously.
How did you develop your mindset to get where you're at right now? Because I'm sure you have a very different mindset than when you first started, you know, and sometimes, you know, I'm sure many people can relate that they grew up in a place where money was a taboo subject and they didn't really know how to talk about it. And it was maybe always with a negative connotation. And so they had to change their mindset around it, or maybe they're still changing their mindset. What did you do? Like what steps did you take to change your mindset? And how has that affected your business?
Oh, I'm going to make this the quickest answer as I possibly can because it was years and years and years of just unlearning everything I've ever known.
Yeah.
So once you unlearn everything, then you have to relearn different ways of thinking, being, acting, doing, right? So I had to let go of my old way of thinking about everything. And I really dove into personal development and just reading a lot of books. I was reading at least like one book a month. And then surrounding yourself with the right people. That's extremely important because you learn from them, right? So, and then also letting go of the wrong people in your life. And I think that's really difficult for a lot of people to really grasp. It's like, you know, it got to a point where I was isolated for many, many years because I was just not in the right places, the right people, the right environments. And I just knew I had to let go of everything in order to make room for the new to come in.
And have you found it to make your company more profitable or maybe easier to run, or what have you found to be the benefits of that?
Yeah, 100%. It's definitely, actually, you know, my therapists are using ChatGPT at times, case managers. They'll type up a note from their session and throw it into ChatGPT and ask ChatGPT to help them rewrite it, you know, and put that in the medical records. And I think that helps save them time as well. But I see the benefit of it. And I think that I don't think we're utilizing AI. There's probably other ways we could that I'm looking into, but I definitely think it's helpful.
Are there any like favorite softwares that you have or tools that help you?
Yeah, we use Monday in my business. We love Monday. We put all of our SOPs in Monday. It's just a great project management system.
Yeah.
And I would just say to someone, take one and learn it. I didn't start in Monday. I started in Trello.
Okay.
And I realized we have way too many clients and Trello is not working, but it worked in the beginning and it was free. I think that Trello is still free. You know, start there. as long as you learn the basics of a project management system, you can then take that and learn any new ones when you can afford a Monday or something like that. So start with Trello, start somewhere. There are tutorials on YouTube for free. You can get a Udemy course for like $10 and you can learn how to use these things. But most importantly, trial and error. And just to go back to the thing that we were speaking about how you have to fail, I read a quote once that said, failing is just deciding where you want to end your story. For example, let's say my story ended on this podcast. But I could also say, well, actually, my story ended not on this podcast, but a year later when my new business made $1 million in its first year. You know, where does your story end? You decide that. You decide where the story ends. So it doesn't have to be a failure. You can just think of it as, this is the bump that I'm going to tell in my best-selling novel someday.
Yeah. Now, if somebody wants to show up to these events and show up to these rooms well-educated, well-informed, and ready for those conversations, what's a good place for them to start learning?
I would always start by going to philanthropic events. I would always put yourself at charitable events. I would find a way to bring a tribe with you. I would never go alone. And I would do everything I could while I'm there to edify you. So if I was bringing Austin to an event and we were going with 5 other people, I would never talk about me. I'd be like, come over, you got to meet this young guy. He's doing all these cool things. You got this amazing podcast and TV show and programs they're doing. You got to come meet this guy, and he's doing all this stuff in business. And now all of a sudden, the more I talk about other people, the more you become interesting versus just talking about yourself. And when I go to the events, I teach everyone that I go with to go early. Go set up the chairs. Don't just go there for the red carpet. Go there and say, how else can we help? And when the event's over, stay late and then meet all the people. Because you're going to find that really successful people, they don't listen to what you say so much, but they watch what you do. And when they see people that show up early and help out, they pay attention to that. So philanthropic rooms have been one of the greatest ways to make the best connections. But the secret is not just that, it's the follow up and follow through. See, people think I can just follow up. No, you got to follow through. And sometimes it could be years. You know, when I first met Mark Victor Hansen, he wrote a book called Chicken Soup for the Soul. And I was a huge fan. I made a list of what's called the Fab 10. Here's 10 people this year I'd love to connect with. He was on my list. I figured if Mark would promote our programs or our courses or we could build a relationship, we could probably expand our business dramatically. And I went to the events. I bought tickets. I sat in the front row. But I never had the deep and meaningful conversation where I felt we could make something happen. And then I began to realize that what was important to Mark. You know, I went to Richard Branson's Island. What was important to Richard Branson? And I began to figure out that if I could help them with things they were focused on. So I began to ask questions like, what projects are you currently working on? What are you most excited about? And when they would start to talk, I would learn to listen, learn, and process and figure out who is a connection I could make, who is a way that I could serve what they're doing without making it sound like it was about me. And man, once I learned that process and that skill set, our Rolodex went through the roof. So if you go to YouTube today and you type in Bill Walsh and Brian Tracy or Bill Walsh and Les Brown or Mark Victor Hansen, all these guys have spoken at our events and given us great testimonials about how I've helped them with their businesses. And yet I never asked them for anything. So it's really a gift set, but start with great charitable events. Always show up early. Always buy a table or bring a tribe. And let's say you have no money. Say, Bill, that sounds good for you because you can afford to write the check. Well, if you couldn't afford to write the check, then offer to volunteer. But don't say I'll volunteer, but you got to pay for my food and you got to pay for my flights. No, a real volunteer means you're not getting paid. That's why it's called volunteer. But you got to show up with that total heartfelt mindset, belief that you're there to serve at a high level. And once again, they're going to notice that. And that's where the real connections are made. It's not when you talk about you, it's when someone asks you, hey, what do you do? And they want to learn more about you. Now, you know, they have a genuine interest.
Do you use social media to promote your business? You know, in this digital age, everybody has social media. You have to kind of exist somewhere online in order for people to see your business or find you. Do you leverage social media a lot?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we have a huge presence on, we're B2B, right? So LinkedIn is our platform of choice, right? And yeah, we do a lot of work on LinkedIn, thought leadership, newsletters, groups, right? And just having a lot of connections too, right? Yeah, I think, LinkedIn, I might be, 16,000, connections or something like that. So having a big network is once again, our network equals our net worth. So having a big network, so you got the right people in the network, and then finding those people that you can bring even more value to than you maybe did last year.
What are some top tips for using LinkedIn to bring in those B2B clients?
Yeah, I think it's really kind of be yourself, right? Don't be pushy, be genuine, right? When you're building relationships, it's like anything else. Don't go in and connect with someone and start selling them, right?
I get
Because
that all the
nobody
time.
likes that, right? I mean, it happens all the time. But if you're genuine and you're different, because they're getting everybody connecting and trying to pitch them right away. No, like try to build genuine relationships with people that you want to get to know better, right? And get that trust down first. Because if you have the foundation of trust, they like you, now they know you, right? They're going to listen to what you've got to say, right? So really sticking out from the crowd and not being like every other salesperson that's just trying to pitch them right away.
Yeah, definitely. And I agree with you. I think it's a great platform for B2B type stuff, especially if you can position yourself as a thought leader on a specific subject. And, we've done that for some of my businesses and it's worked pretty well.